Hello everyone, this is Sam Breiter and I'm the founder of Run Breiter, a digital running community meant to educate, motivate, and entertain beginner runners and runners who struggle with consistency, see all the mental and physical benefits running provides. I've been coaching runners both in person and digitally for 5 years, but have been running both competitively and casually for 14 years. The Run Breiter podcast gives me the opportunity to bring on guests to share their running journeys and running advice. I assure you, listening to this podcast will make you want to run and follow your journey, as the conversations in this episode will send signals to your mind that even when it's cold, you're sore, tired, or going through something, that a run is still well worth doing. All right. Well, welcome to another episode in the Run Breiter podcast. Chase Adams is joining us, and Chase is someone who I've connected with via the TikTok running community. Specifically, what I really appreciate, Chase, that you helped me out with was you had that cool giveaway. And then after that, I'm like, well, I've been binge watching his content. He helped me out with something. I want to get him on the show, and I want to really get to know this guy and hear what motivates him, hear about his running story. So, Chase, I want to hand it off to you. Give yourself an opportunity to introduce yourself, maybe jump into what got you into running, and we'll have a great conversation about everything today. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely, man. I'm psyched. So first off, thank you for having me on here, and thanks for participating in my little giveaway. It's the second time I've been fortunate enough to do one of those. And the first time that I did it, the person never got back to me or gave me any assurance that they actually got the element, which is what you got. And it was the same thing. So yeah, I'm very appreciative of you getting back with me just to let me know that I got it, because it's all done through them, right? Like I just tell them who to send it to and they send it, so I don't have any verification that it's actually getting sent. But no, like you said, my name's Chase Adams. I'm 38 years old, and for basically as long as I can remember, I've been into running. That's why, like, when I say that I've been running for 30 years, like that's pretty accurate, really. And when I was just a really young kid on the playground, I knew pretty early on that, I was faster than a lot of the kids. And then as I grew older, I started to realize that it wasn't necessarily that I was faster than everybody, but my battery and my engine just went longer than all the other kids, whether it was playing tag on the playground or playing basketball in the gym. So when I got to middle school and the high school age, I got into cross country and distance track, and I just fell in love with the sport as a whole.
That's great, man. And I love the background of it. All started when you were younger, you were on the playground, you probably could tell that you were running, but I'm sure for you, one, the battery, the endurance, but with so many runners too, we see it be because of the fact that you're just willing to put in that hard work, right? So, I appreciate that story. When did you actually start competing though with running?
So I was pretty good even in those younger years. And, you say, the hard work that you have to put into it. I'll be honest, my early years, I didn't put a whole lot of effort into it. I was just kind of rolling off natural ability and natural athleticism. To be honest, I was a classic underachiever as a youth. Coming up through high school, I just did enough to stay eligible for track and cross country. I knew what I had to do. In fact, my parents were even stricter. They told me I had to have all A's and B's. So when I brought my report card home, it was usually just a string of B's, because I knew that that's all I had to do to stay eligible. But that kind of bit me. It bit me later on, because I was good enough that I started to get like offers from colleges, mostly like junior colleges and some D2 colleges, and nothing crazy, but I didn't have the grades to go to some of the better schools. And in that, I also did not get some of the better scholarship offers. And I couldn't really afford to go to a nice college without some kind of scholarship money or some financial aid. So I did end up going to my hometown university, which is a junior college, and I ran for them. So I was able to go there basically for free. I pretty much made money while I was going there, but the same thing happened. I was that perpetual underachiever, and 2 years of junior college, that's all you get. So after 2 years of track and cross country eligibility, I did the same thing in college. I did just enough to stay eligible. So when I got to the end of those 2 years, I didn't have enough credits. I didn't have a degree to my name. Like I just knew that I was done with track and cross country. And because I didn't get those good grades, I also didn't get any offers to go into any bigger schools, which is a shame because I felt like when I got to college, that was when I was really starting to hit my stride and kind of see my potential. I had a really good coach in college that worked very well with me.
Interesting. And I mean, I'd be curious. I know obviously right now you've been doing half marathons and marathons. I'm not sure. We'll get into it if you do any other races, but that's at least what I've seen you signed up for and participating in at that level, at that high school to college level. I assume obviously shorter races, but were they distance specific focus races or what was that looking
Yeah,
like?
mostly obviously cross country was distance, but in track I was kind of more of a middle distance guy. I had a little bit more speed than a lot of the other distance runners. So I was like a 1500, 1600 guy. I ran a lot of 4x8s. 800 was my main event coming out of high school.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mhm.
And I mean, obviously, I want to continue to hear this story, right? So you finished school, and then from there, did you take some time off of running after that? I mean, obviously, it's great that you got to compete collegiately for at least 2 years there. Now
Mhm.
you're obviously running at a really high level, but continue going through the story. What happened after college? Yeah, I'd love to hear
Yeah,
it.
so after those college years, it got a little rocky. I didn't for the first time in my life, I really didn't have running as something to kind of ground me. So I really didn't know who I was outside of running either. So I tried to tell myself that that's what I needed to figure out. I needed to figure out who I was outside of running. And yeah, I was also young. I was young and dumb, and I turned. I'll start when I was 20. I went into the military. I tried my hand at the Air Force, and I turned 21 while I was in the military, which is a very dangerous time for a young kid to be turning 21. And I didn't handle it very well. I got a DUI fairly early on after I turned 21, and then a buddy of mine got busted for underage drinking, and I got slapped with contributing to minors in the military court session. So they quickly moved on from me. I was only in the Air Force for about a year because I just kept kind of screwing up, and that really I had to go back home. I had to move back in with my parents, and I really just didn't know who I was. That there's about a 5 or 6 year time span there where I got mixed up in drugs and alcohol. Really, to be honest with you, I was kind of in and out of trouble with the law. I went into jail a few times, and when I look back at that time in my life, not only was I lost, but I also didn't have the sport that I was passionate about. I wasn't doing what I loved, and it took me a long time to really realize that. And finally, I was able to, thankfully, in my mid 20s, I kind of shaped up. I got myself a good job. I told myself I was done messing with all that stupid stuff and getting in trouble with the law and doing things that would get me in trouble with the law. And yeah, I made the decision, kind of flipped the switch one day, and it was like, it's time to be a grown up now. And I actually made that decision right before I had to go to court for my last probation violation. So I ended up going to court and getting sentenced to some time in jail. And then I was able to get out early. I spent about a year there, and it was what I was in was I was in work release. I wasn't in jail. So I was able to get out and go to work. And then I also, after good behavior, I got passes on Sundays. And on those Sundays, yeah, it starts out with like 4 hours and they go up to like 12. But when I got to where I was getting like 6 or 8 hours in, I was going home to my parents' house and I'd go out and run. And so I was running one day a week every Sunday. And I realized then how much I missed running in general. I was really loving it. I was loving my Sunday runs. And I just decided I'm gonna call my lawyer up and see if I can get out of this early. So I did. I'd been nothing but good the entire time I was there, so it wasn't a big deal. He basically I called him and he had me out like the next day. And 3 months later, I ran my first marathon.
Wow. Beautiful
So
story, man. Thank you, first of all, because I didn't know all this information about you, but I really appreciate how vulnerable you were with me right now and just willingness to open about this because, yeah, I mean, I see your content, man, and it's all just like great stuff about running, exciting, motivational content. And maybe you have posted about this a little bit, but like I haven't seen that at least. And I mean, I love how running was something that you started off with when you were young and like obviously after you kind of fell away from running, I'm so sorry to hear about the DUI and all the stuff that you dealt with the law, but it sounds like after dealing with some of those hardships and probably some of the lowest days and years of your life, you were able to go back into something that, you started from, right? When you were a better version of yourself and obviously able to bounce back. And it sounds like clean up your life really. And running had a big part of that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Like, I mean, it really kind of helped dig me out of a pretty big hole. And no, I don't talk about it a lot. And it's the way I like to refer to it, Sam, is I'm not ashamed of that time of my life, but I don't advertise it either. I'm a real believer in everything happens for a reason. So I fully believe that I would not be the person that I am today had I not gone through those struggles. Because like I said, when I was growing up, it was just kind of just enough to get by, like I said, and I needed to have some real world experiences to kind of shape me up. So
Yeah.
but running, like I said, running helped me dig right out of that.
Mhm. Do you feel like with running too, like, I mean, if you don't mind taking a couple steps back, when you were doing it both at that high school and college level, because I know you were saying you were just getting by with on the academic side, were you also just getting by with running? Obviously, you were running at a high enough level to be a college athlete, but did it take going through those experiences to really drive you to take running a bit more seriously? Or, I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think so. Going back to high school, first off, my high school coach was amazing. He's one of my favorite human beings in the whole world. But he and I have had conversations in the past how he doesn't feel like he was a good enough coach for me during those years. And like I said, I don't dwell in that type of stuff, so I didn't really care. Like I said, he's still my favorite person in the world. But when I got to college, like I said, that was when I really started to find my stride in the sport, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that I had a really really good coach during that time, and I was really enjoying the competing. I was hitting levels that I didn't think that I had in me in high school. So that was a lot of fun, but at the same time, to get to where I am today, no, I would have had to go through those because I was still even back then. If I really wanted to continue to be a good runner, then I would have done better in school and I would have tried to apply myself further on down the line. But that's not what happened. And we are where we are today.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, I mean, you really grow from those experiences. And I'm so glad you're on the better side of things now. So, I mean, it sounded like when you were like 25, right? That's when you started getting back into running and like cleaning up your act, right?
Yep, absolutely. Like I
And then,
said, I got out of work release and ran my first marathon 3 months later. It was the Indy Marathon at Fort Bend, and since then, like they ran a full marathon back then, but since then they only backed it off to a half marathon, which is a great thing because that's a fantastic race. If you're ever in the Indianapolis area in the fall, it's an amazing race. The Indy half is, but they didn't have enough scenery to really make a good full marathon. But that was the one that I chose to do, and I think I ran around. I honestly don't know what my time was from that one because I took off like a bat out of hell for that race, and I ran my first 15 miles in something crazy. Again, I don't know what it was, but it was a crazy fast time for my first 15 miles, and I just hit an absolute wall. So it was the first marathon, but that's kind of how a lot of people's first marathon goes, right?
no, for sure. Why'd you decide to sign up for the marathon? Was it that you really just wanted to try something different and out of the box and push yourself because you obviously were trying to like change your life up in a big way and you felt like the marathon was that opportunity, or was there a different reason that you picked the marathon specifically after all that?
I think on some level, so going back to my high school coach again, like I said, I look up to the man. He's one of my favorite human beings in the whole world. And I remember he ran the Boston Marathon when I was in high school, when I ran for him. So immediately, because I looked up to him so much, that kind of became one of my life goals. I really wanted to run the Boston Marathon. So when and I think he actually wrote me a few times while I was locked up, and we had some conversations during that time. And I knew that I wanted to run Boston. I was like, I got to run Boston. I got to run a marathon, see where I'm at, get a baseline, and see what I need to do.
That's great. And obviously you're wearing a 2022 Boston Marathon shirt right now. So we know you've competed in Boston, or you at least just bought the shirt. But I know your times are Boston Qualifier eligible, of course. So yeah, I mean, from 25 to 38, I mean, we can take it a little slow or whatever pace you'd like. What did running look like after that first marathon for you?
Well, it was tough, really, because coming out of all that trouble, I had gotten a good job, a place that I still work at today.
Where's that?
Um, but I started out. It's automotive manufacturing, so I help build seats for vehicles. So it's very physical, demanding work, especially at the entry level. Like I came in on the manufacturing floor, and I'm doing very physical labor, long hours, and that kind of prevented me from being able to train at the level that I wanted to train at. A lot of times I was coming home from work and I was exhausted, barely move. If I sat down on the couch, it was game over. Like there was no getting back up.
Yeah.
But over the years, like I said, it's a great job and a great place to work. And I I've kind of moved. I've begun moving up the ladder. So as I've moved up the ladder and gotten into a management role or a more hands off role, I've had some more time on my hands, some more energy on my hands, and that's really when my running started to pick up finally. And there were some other things involved too. Like I had a DNF a few years ago, right before the pandemic, that was a real turning point for my running too. But up until that point, like I was really just running, doing whatever training that I could, working all those long physical hours, and then doing all the races that I could. And a lot of times, me and my wife would plan our vacations. Obviously, we were boyfriend and girlfriend back there, and we actually met at the place that I work at. But
Oh, cool.
in our early years together, we would just plan all of our vacations around marathons and half marathons for me to run, and it just became a lot of fun.
That is super fun. Yeah, no, that's great. And, I find it interesting your story about how you had that physically demanding job at the beginning. Obviously, you still work there. It sounds like it's a little bit more hands off for you now. You were probably like in such great shape though, between doing that and running, but I could understand probably if you're doing too much lifting and stuff like that and you can't spend the time to train in an effective way, it would probably hold you back. But I'm glad now it sounds like you have that flexibility to one, obviously be in a role that I'm sure you're excites you a little bit more, but two, be able to focus more on running. But I think it's really cool that you and your wife have been traveling and running, you've been running marathons and half marathons. Around how many marathons, half marathons have you done? Maybe share with people some of your biggest accomplishments. I'd love to hear about those a little bit. I know you just recently got a PR too, so which is great. I mean, you're obviously still improving.
Hmm. I'd say I'm probably in the double digits on half marathons for sure. Maybe I'm probably approaching 10 full marathons. I really just need to do an inventory at some time. But no, like I said, we traveled a lot. So a lot of the marathons that I would run were kind of like destination places. Like I did Disney World for the first time, I think in like 2016. And that was an interesting experience that I trained really hard for Disney without looking into it at all. And if you've ever done Disney or you've ever met anybody that's done Disney, typically it's not a marathon that you race. It's just really hard. There's so many people, but we did that. Um, and then I go back to Indianapolis almost every year to do the Monumental in November. I did the half marathon a few years instead of the full, so that's why I've got more of a tally of halves. But I did a couple rock and roll series races too, Chicago, Nashville, and those were a lot of fun. I've never run the Chicago Marathon. I just did the Chicago Rock and Roll. I don't think they have that one anymore though. But
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
um, but yeah, that's probably, and then of course I qualified for Boston and finally, and got there last year. And that was just an incredible experience.
Wow. So did it take, because I know you mentioned starting training for marathons when you were around 25. And obviously you're 38 now and you ran Boston for the first time last year. So it took you like around 12 years of training to get to the point of qualifying.
Yeah, I'd say that I really, other than the fact that I was, working those physically demanding hours, I was also, kind of uneducated at the time. Even though I grew up running, I grew up running cross country. I had college years running. I still didn't have the kind of education to really be able to train right. I tried training on my own, and then I tried buying training plans, and nothing was really working. I finally, my best friend actually, who uh, I've gone to school with since we were little. So he's basically grown up running with me, and it's one of those frenemy type situations too, where he's my best friend. He was my best man in my wedding, but he's also like my biggest competition sometimes. And
Awesome. You kind of need someone like
he
that.
actually qualified for Boston before I did, and that really didn't sit well with me. And that's when I started looking into getting a coach, and that was kind of the turning point. That's when things really started to take off for my running.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess with this coach that you brought in recently, I mean, obviously you ran Boston back in 2022. I assume probably like what, 2 or 3 years ago, you brought in a coach.
Yeah, so when I started looking for a coach, um, first off, I was kind of blown away by some of the coaching services out there. Like I was looking for stuff through the internet and finding some outrageous prices. I was just like, man, is that how much it costs for a running coach? That's insane.
Yeah.
And I finally found this one guy who he was charging prices that I found fair, and he brought a lot of energy too. So I really liked that. But he also limited you to like how much communication you had with him. And he would send me like a month's worth of training, and sometimes I wouldn't talk to him for, until the next month. So, things would happen. I would try to message him, I would try to email him, and I wouldn't hear back from him ever. So I was really kind of having a sour experience with that first coach that I had. And then it was during the pandemic, actually, 2020, I came across, I want to say it was an Instagram ad. He asked me where I found him recently, and I'm pretty sure it was an Instagram ad. And I just sent him a message. Paul Whitaker. He's over in England, and he's PW Performance Coaching. I sent him a message. I said, "Hey, I already have a coach. Why should I switch to you?" Basically, telling him to give me his sales pitch, right? And he came at me and told me all that he's done as a runner. He was very successful. He'd done some Olympic trials over in England, and told me how much he told me all about his training plans. And then I asked him about how his communication was with his runners. And he says, I probably talk to my runners on average 4 or 5 times a week. And that, to me, that was immediate. I was like, all right, yeah, I'm ditching the other guy and I'm going with this guy. And ever since then, ever since I've gotten with Coach Paul, it has just been nothing but success. And I've just seen my times get faster than I really ever imagined as a marathoner. So I really owe a lot to him. He's been great to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you were able to compete in marathons. You're doing a lot of things right. But what were you doing wrong? What has this, coach Paul that you mentioned, what has he brought to you that has been different, maybe changed you from a mental, physical standpoint to allow you to get these big accomplishments over the last couple of years?
Well, like I said, I think the biggest thing is his communication. He gets to know me individually, and over the years, he's not only gotten to know me, but know my running and know how I race, and all that has been just tremendously beneficial. I had started learning before I got with him more about some easy running techniques, because before I ever got with the coach, I always ran hard. I just ran what I consider a comfortable pace all the time. And I always felt like if I was running, this time, that I was going too slow. But I really started educating myself on easy running and the benefits of that. But with my first coach, I was also doing a crazy amount of strength training. And I was kind of big in strength training already. Like I liked doing the HIIT workouts. I do did the push-ups every day. I was kind of into strength training anyway. But the negative side to that was that, and this is going to sound like a brag on myself, but the reality is that when I start lifting and when I start doing a lot of strength training, I bulk up real bad. And it gets to the point where I just don't feel right where I'm running. So when I first got with Coach Paul, that was the first thing that he said. He actually looked at my schedule. He was like, "Is this the kind of strength, this kind of stuff you've been doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, doing a really intense workout every Friday night." And he's just like, "We're just gonna forget all that. We're gonna table strength work for right now. I just want you to focus on running." And that was kind of a load off my mind, really. I didn't realize how much I would love hearing that, but when he said that, it was a load off of my mind, and I was able to just focus on running. And of course, since then, it's been a few years now, but he, trying to inject some strength training back into it, which is really hard after you've gone a year or 2 years without having to do any kind of strength training, basically eliminating it from your routine. Trying to find a way to get it back in there is pretty tough.
Yeah, and let me ask you about that because something, and obviously any approaches with running can be controversial, but for you, obviously, this is a proof of value in this sense. I hear a lot of people, and for myself, like I incorporate strength training with my running, just one, because I enjoy it, but also two, from all of the chatter about how strength training can be beneficial for running in that it could prevent injuries and stuff like that. What is his theory as far as why you should, why you shouldn't strength train with running, or for you specifically, why you should why you were recommended to take a step away from it for a bit?
Yeah, so yeah, he's definitely not against strength training. We've, like I said, we've since injected that back in or tried to, and it's my end where I'm failing at it. But he's scheduled a couple times on my calendar every week, and it's just real quick 20-minute body weight strength training exercises, nothing fancy. But I think that the argument with strength training, it to get over the hump, or to, once you kind of plateau just from running, you're going to have to do something extra to get faster if that's your goal, or to stay healthy, because sometimes people just strength train because they've got something going on, they got strength imbalance or something that they didn't know about. But at the time when he told me to table it, it was just because I was doing a lot of strength training, more than I probably should have been.
Interesting. No, yeah, that's good to know. Because sometimes for me, I'm like, maybe it would be nice to like try out like lowering it or obviously walking away from it potentially. I mean, because I'm asking you a lot of these questions, one, because I think, there's a lot of people in your shoes who want to improve on a run as a runner, and maybe they haven't gotten these big PRs. They have goals of breaking a 3 hour marathon. That's actually one of my goals too. Like my best times is 3 hours and 13 minutes. I'm trying to figure out like what I can do to make that difference as well. And so I'd be curious. I mean, I think the easy running is something that for me, like I've been doing for a little bit, probably over like the last year. Like I didn't understand it at first. I was just thinking, okay, you got to go out there and run hard on those days, and then you'll have your separate speed workouts. But outside of just the easy running part, were there any like unique workouts, I guess, like speed work that were being done that were different from what you originally were doing? Or like any special routines with long runs that were implemented, maybe drills or like any outside work that you think made a difference in your improvement through the years?
So as far as working with Paul,
Yeah,
or just in
correct.
general, yeah. So he does a really good job of mixing things up, and like I really do a variety of different workouts just all the time.
Mhm.
And that, I think, has been the big key there. A lot of it's his education as a coach, really. He's so well versed in different training styles that he's been able to do that. And that keeps it interesting for me, and it keeps me wanting to go back out and do that new kind of workout. And I'm not getting fatigued on any one thing. I actually made a video here recently where I was actually getting fatigued
Mm.
from a type of workout that he was having me do a lot of. And I just told him, I was like, "Hey man, I think I'm getting tired of these workouts. I think they're just I woke up this morning and I dreaded it, and I don't normally dread workouts." And he was just like, "Oh, that's no problem. We can just try something else." He was very, worked with me very well. And like I said, the communication with him is just phenomenal. I talk to him almost every day.
Uh, that's great, man. Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm glad to see. Obviously, you were able to get to that big goal of qualifying for Boston. And right now, like I think I was reading on your profile, you're going for a sub 240 now. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, because my PR is 240.05.
oh
So
shoot,
I'm like five I was like 5 seconds away.
it's
And
wild.
that was my very first race under Coach Paul. And so it's 2 years ago now.
Hmm.
So I've been struggling to hit that barrier again since. I ran Boston in 2 hours and 43 minutes. I ran Indianapolis twice in 2 hours and 43 minutes. So I've got a couple races this year that I'm really hoping that they're fast. So I was trying to get fast races in this year because I really want to break that barrier.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, I'd be curious for you too, like what drives you towards these specific times with racing? Because I think some people, running is a great way to like mentally feel good, physically be in shape, all that great stuff. But for me, and I'm sure for you too, like there's a lot of fulfillment with reaching those new milestones and new goals that you try to set. Is that kind of what drives you, or is there anything else outside that motivates you towards really pushing the envelope here as far as some of those times that you've been pushing out?
Really, I feel like I said, those years that I missed out, I don't dwell on them. I don't regret them. But at the same time, I realize that I'm getting older and I'm at an age right now. I feel like that I just need to kind of be maximizing my speed while I can. And I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to stop trying to get faster. That might happen sooner, that might happen later. But right now, I'm just trying to use the youth and the speed and the strength that I have to do the best that I can. And as far as breaking, the 2 hours and 40 minutes specifically, if I would, like I said, that was my first race with Coach Paul. And up until that point, I had fell short of qualifying for Boston or breaking 3 hours many times, and it was just heartbreaking. I mentioned my DNF in 2019. That was a breaking point for me. I didn't know if I was ever going to run again after that. I was so bummed out. But then I came back a year and a half later with Coach Paul, and I hadn't broken 3 hours yet. I had not broken 3 hours. I think my best time up to that point was 3 hours and 10 minutes, maybe. So I hadn't even come close to qualifying for Boston. And then next thing I know, I have this amazing race where it was one of those days where all the stars aligned and I felt amazing. And next thing I know, I'm PRing by 30 minutes. I didn't know how to react to that. So it was a surreal moment for sure.
That's a wild PR. Wow. So, like, obviously, that day specifically where you got that 30-minute PR, a lot of great things were happening for you. But, like, I mean, was there anything specifically like during the race that like pushed you over the edge? Do you think it was just the training and that you were prepared for it? Was it like a new strategy that you put in? Like, what really allowed you? Is that 30 minutes when you've been running for as long as you had probably at that point? That's significant, man.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if it would have been 30 minutes. It wouldn't have been my first race with Coach Paul had it not been for the pandemic. So I had tried to get into a few races during 2020, but it wasn't happening, so it got pushed off. But on that day, like I said, it was one of those things that just the stars aligned. I had gone into it with a plan to break 3 hours. That was my plan. That was my strategy. The data from the workouts all said that I could do better than that, but I didn't care. I was just there to qualify for Boston. That was it. And after I think it was probably about the 10K point, I found this guy that was going about the pace that I felt comfortable at. So I hung with him for a little bit and we got through the halfway point, and I was just like, I feel pretty good. I think I can go faster. And I passed him, and next thing I know, I was just like, I kept picking up the pace and picking up. I ran a negative split that day, and I was kind of crunching the numbers in my head there around mile 20. I was like, huh, like what kind of pace, what kind of time am I running right now? Like I had no idea, and I got finished, and I was just, I it was a very emotional day for me too. Like I broke down and I cried. I did. Like as soon as I crossed the finish line, I sat down on the curb next to my wife. She thought I was injured again. She thought I'd hurt myself again. But I was so happy. I couldn't believe what had just happened.
That's amazing, man. I'm so happy you were able to achieve that, right? Because to even run a marathon, what 1% of people do it, but then to break the 3 hour mark and be able to do it with such flying colors. And I'm sure that day, like you probably just that was probably one of the best days you've ever had, right? I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely up there.
Great. That's great. I want to ask you about the DNF though, because I've never heard that story from you, and it sounded like it really like was a hard situation for you, and you stepped away from running for a bit. Do you mind walking through that story with me for a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was actually I was already working with my first coach at that time. Um, and I had come into that race kind of nervous. Like I remember thinking like, am I in shape to run 3 hours? My best friend, like I said, the year before in that very same race, it was the Indianapolis Monumental. Uh, he had finally qualified for Boston, and that was the spark that really hit me. But then we raced the Monumental the very next year, and that's where I'm just kind of like, man, I don't know what kind of shape I'm in. And I got about 7 miles in, I started feeling something in my calf, and it was just I was already kind of mentally checked out. Like I really wasn't. I didn't know if I was running fast enough. I didn't feel like I got off to a good start, and then my calf starts hurting,
Mm.
and it was I missed the turnoff, like because it was hurting so bad that I was considering just taking the half marathon cutoff because they run the half and the full at the same time. But I didn't. I kept going. I was like, no, I'm going to tough it out no matter how slow I got to go. But then I got to about 10 miles in and I had to stop. I could hardly walk. I made it up to the next medical tent and they tried massaging it. But the moment they touched it, I was in too much pain to continue on. So after that day, I had really, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't feel like I was ever going to break that 3 hour barrier. I didn't feel like I was ever going to qualify for Boston on that day. I was so checked out. And I probably would have at least taken a break from running after that had I not been signed up to do the Dopey Challenge at Walt Disney World Marathon weekend the very next January, just 2 months later, with my sister, no less. So I knew I had to do that, but I was so out of running at that point. I was just like, man, I don't know. We're gonna get to Disney. We're gonna see what happens. And somewhere in that 2 month time frame, and on those 4 days where you do the four different races on Disney Marathon weekend, the love just came back. It was just I fell in love with the sport again. I was reinvigorated like no other, and I left Disney World and came back home to Indiana just with a fire in my chest like just nothing else. So uh, I'm very grateful that I was signed up to do another. I was already committed to another race after that because if I wasn't, then I don't know what would have happened.
Wow. That's really cool. Was it like the people and the community gathering that brought back that fire? Was it the fact that you just started feeling good again physically? Any clue what brought that love back?
I think in that time I was doing some little research on my own, looking into different shoes and the way that shoes affect your body, the way they affect your running. Because I really felt like in that race, part of the problem was the shoes that I was wearing. So I did start digging into shoes, and in doing that, that's when I started discovering different YouTube accounts. I started seeing people like Seth James Damore and Kofuzi online, and that became fun for me. Like that was just what I did. I'd throw them on in the morning, first thing when I wake up, and then at Disney World, of course, it's an amazing event to be a part of anyway. The Walt Disney World Marathon weekend, but to do it all the way, all 4 days, and seeing my sister battle through it because my sister. She's been a runner pretty much all her life too, but not even to the same extent that I am. And she was really feeling rough when we got to the half marathon day. Are you familiar with the Dopey Challenge?
I was gonna say I've never heard of the Dopey challenge. I know
Okay.
it's a
Yeah,
marathon.
let me back up real quick and explain that. So the Dopey Challenge is where you do every race during Walt Disney World Marathon weekend. So they do the 5K on Thursday, they do the 10K on Friday, the half marathon on Saturday, and the full marathon on Sunday. So to do the Dopey Challenge, you do all 4 days, all four races, all 4 days.
Intense.
Yeah, it is, and it's a lot of fun too. Like I said, my sister was really feeling it come Thursday, but I didn't think she was going to show up to the starting line on marathon day. I thought she was done, but she showed up, she finished it, and like seeing her do that, I think really kind of helped spark something in me too. Because when she overcame that and when she accomplished that feat, that was her first full marathon that day too, and it was it was really special, and that helped push me along as well.
Yeah. It's so interesting how sometimes it takes someone else, like their love and their passion and something they accomplish, to then bring back your own personal goals for yourself. And I'm glad that you were able to have that experience. And I'm glad you continued running through some obstacles, because we all deal with different things, whether it's not reaching that accomplishment we want, or maybe something in our personal lives take away from running, right? But it's really, I think, about finding that why and something to bring you back into the joy and love that we all have for the sport. And again, like I'm really glad to hear that you were able to figure that out through that experience. And so now I'd be curious, like, what's the future looking like for you? I know 240, you're trying to break that, but like, and I know you're also trying to maximize your speed. Mid 30s, I heard that's like prime running age. I'm sure you could attest to that as you've improved through the years. But is it more just at this point hitting the times while you can and then enjoying the experience and traveling? What is running going to look like for you in the next couple of years, you think?
Well, yeah, we are still building a lot of my races around traveling, but I also want to run the 6 majors.
Mm.
So I have a goal to do one of those each year over the next 5 years now. So last year I did Boston. This year I got into Berlin. So I'm pretty psyched about that. Me and my wife
That's
have made a lot of the traveling plans already for that because it's a vacation, right? So
awesome.
we're just going to try to peck one off each year. And when it comes to those, obviously Berlin's a fast course, so I'd like to run fast there. But at the same time, um, in Boston, I was trying to go under 240 as well. And not that you can't run PRs in Boston, but it's the experience. You almost miss out on it if you're focused too much on trying to run fast. I almost regret trying to run fast in Boston, but um, when I get to like New York or Tokyo, which I've been to Tokyo, but I'm just going to probably take it easy and enjoy the environment.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, there's plenty of marathons that I've done where I'm going all out, but like I just did Austin, I think 2 weeks ago from now, and I ran that one nice and easy. And honestly, it was like my favorite marathon that I've done, mostly probably because I wasn't dying at the end and I got to enjoy the rest of that day. But I think especially like the major ones that are obviously the best put together marathons in the world. I think it'll be cool for you, like having those as like easier experiences and enjoying those courses. So I'm excited to follow your journey and see how those go for you. And I do want to talk about too, obviously, your content creation journey, because that's how we met, right? And Chaser No Pacer, that's the name of your page. I got to ask you, obviously, your name's Chase, but why'd you go with Chaser No Pacer specifically? Is there a story behind that?
Not really, not a really good one. Other than the fact that I do like to run negative splits, and I like to run from behind because there's just no better feeling than passing people. So in that sense, I prefer to chase after people rather than pace out in front of people like your boy Pre and your poster up there. So
Well, that's awesome. And I mean, I think it's a smarter strategy for races. I feel like if I'm doing negative splits, you end up getting a better result. But that's cool, man. But so why'd you decide to start putting a camera in your face and making content about running? I'd be curious on that too.
there's a few reasons actually. It's kind of I guess it's kind of complicated, but like I mentioned during COVID, or actually right before COVID, I got into some of the YouTube channels. I got into some of the creators that were on there, and I was loving what they were doing, and I was like, man, I want to do that. I got really envious of it. I was like, man, I want to do that. I went out and bought some camera equipment. I bought a GoPro. I was totally invested from the beginning,
We're on.
but the time that it was taking me was incredible because I didn't have any kind of editing knowledge beforehand, and I wasn't very versed in it. So I would record a video and go to edit it. It took me like all night sometimes. And I was just like, man, I can't keep doing this. I love doing it, but I can't keep doing it. And then I don't remember when exactly. It was probably about a year ago now. I discovered the TikTok community. Not that I discovered TikTok. I previously I'd thought that TikTok was just for dancing idiots that like to post random stupid stuff. And so, so I got on TikTok and found a running community there. I didn't know existed, and then I found out how much time I was going to save by doing more short form content rather than this long form content. And so that's really what it's about for me. Like I started doing content creating because I really enjoy doing the editing just as much anymore as I do the running. And I'd really like to get back into some longer form content, YouTube videos at some point. But right now I'm just having a lot of fun on TikTok creating content.
That's great, man. And are you still doing the Run Talk live? I haven't checked in a little bit, but I know you, Caroline, and Jake, you're jumping on there every so often. What's the message that you guys are trying to get across with that?
Yeah, we're still doing it every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So the message that we're trying to get across is really we met through this community, and we want to continue to encourage other people to meet in this community. Like it's gotten to a point now where me and Carolyn and Jake talk almost every day too. Like we have a little text chain that we're always piping in on with each other, and we've really become good friends. And I full credit to Jake because he's the one that reached out to us wanting to do it. And Jake was one of the very first people that I followed on TikTok. He made a video featuring me that helped me grow on TikTok, and I owe him a lot. And he's one of my favorite people in the world. And me and Carolyn, we just have this quirky sense of humor together that's just goofy and fun, and it's a blast. So we are planning on expanding a little bit. So not to go into too much detail, but we are planning on expanding on the whole Run Talk Live brand that we've kind of got going here. But yeah, it's a great time.
That's great, man. I'm glad that you guys are looking at encouraging people to get together and get to know each other in this community, because I think that's really special. And I got to jump on those a little bit more, but I have jumped on a bit in the past, and it's always seems like great vibes, great conversations. So I think you guys are doing a great thing there, and I think for you as well, like individually, Chaser No Pacer, like the brand is great, and I'm excited for what you have lined up in the future. And yeah, I mean, like, are there any like big goals that you have for the brand specifically? Obviously, like just continue making content, I'm sure, but like anything that you're looking at striving towards achieving?
Yeah, I mean, I think like any content creator, I would like to, get a little bit more popular and maybe have that be a sustaining secondary income at some point. But really, I'm just having so much fun making the content and sharing the messages, sharing the experiences that I have. That's really what I try to talk about the most is experience, because even like I said, I've been doing it for 30 years, and even though I've been doing it for that long, I don't feel like I have a wealth of knowledge as far as like advice on coaching and things like that. Like I don't feel like I'm qualified to be a coach, to be honest.
Mhm.
And that's just because I feel like I lack the education side of it to know exactly what type of workouts work for everything, the things that my coach Paul has. But I do aspire to be a coach one day. So it's going to come down to, me taking the time to educate myself on this sport that we love more. But right now I'm just trying to share experiences. I've been doing it for a long time. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of stuff, and I just want to, share that experience with everybody.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's what's the most important part, and that's what's going to keep you on there. I think ultimately doing it to share those experiences. So I appreciate the content. I know, if people here haven't checked out Chase's content, Chaser No Pacer, definitely check him out. He's got such great content, and I'm sure like you're going to stay consistent with it and continue to crush it, because you clearly have that love and passion for it. But yeah, before we wrap things up here today, Chase, I mean, any like tips or advice that you would want to share? I mean, a lot of the listeners that we're trying to attract here at Run Brighter, beginner runners, inconsistent runners, people who really want to have that lifestyle component with running that you and I both clearly have.
I think the most important thing with this sport that we all love is for you to do it the way that makes it fun for you, or do it the way that makes you happy. If you want to run fast or you want to make time goals, great, go after it. If you just want to continue to use these races to explore exotic locations and take awesome vacations, then do that. Just do whatever keeps it fun for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because if you're not having fun, what's the point of it? I mean, very
Yeah.
few people, are going to be able to run in the Olympics, right? And monetize their running ability. But having a lifelong experience with running and just having fun with it as many days as possible, because we know there's going to be days that are hard, right? I think is a great way to handle it. So again, man, thank you so much. It's been so much fun. Really, just really great to learn about all your experiences, both in running and in life, and how running has allowed you to live, I think, for you, the best version of your life.
Yeah, dude, no problem. And thank you for having me on. It was great to open up and talk to you a little bit and share some of my story. And like I said, I was just honored to be on the show to begin with.